Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we're out here on my favorite desert back road and we are testing the 2022 Toyota Corolla APEX. This is the new high performance package that's got ground effects, it's got suspension, it's got a lot of little goodies here and there that really make it a lot more exciting than the average everyday Toyota Corolla. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a test drive and I'm going to tell you what I really think. All right, my friends, before we get out on the test drive, as always, we're going to talk about what we've got here. This is the 2022 Toyota Corolla. This is an XSE trim grade with the APEX package. Now, the APEX package is available on the SC and the XSE. Here, as priced, we're at $29,000 and some change. And the only option on this car is the floor mat package at $249, which I haven't seen a Toyota in my life that they didn't just stick floor mats in it and charge you an extra $250. It's just part of buying a Toyota. But that said, the XSE trim package is really what we're talking about here today because it does offer quite a few things. And looking right up front, you can see that this has a unique front fascia, gloss black trim with bronze accents. I think it's pretty attractive. Pretty aggressive lower front spoiler. Now, it's pretty low. And given the fact that this has a 0.6 inch lower suspension on it, which you can definitely see looking at it there on the picture, in spite of that, I haven't found that that spoiler was bumping into things during my week with it. Coming around the side, 18-inch wheels on this, and these are about 2.2 pounds lighter than the standard 18-inch wheel, so says Toyota. And down the side also, some more pretty aggressive ground effects in terms of styling and also functionality. You can see, again, the bronze trim and how that lip really does come up there toward the rear wheel. From this angle, you can really see the sporting stance that this lowered suspension gives this along with these ground effects. But let's move up here to the top. Another part of this package is the black painted roof, which really sets off nicely with this cement paint color, I think. And looking at the back, there you're going to find a nice gloss black lip spoiler on the deck lid. The taillights on this, LED of course, but these have black smoked lenses. Down in the lower fascia, more of the ground effects package. And there you're also going to find a genuine exhaust tip, 3.5 inch diameter. Now, that's a genuine exhaust tip, and by that I mean you can burn your leg on it if you get your leg up too close to it. So pretty rare in the automotive scene today. The interior of the Corolla is a place that we've sat in a few times in a number of other reviews, and when this car first came out some time ago, this was probably a class-leading interior. From the old Corolla, the materials were much better, higher quality materials, fit and finish. It just felt more premium at that time. As we sit here in what is essentially a fully loaded Corolla, the XSE with the APEX package, we have materials here that are pretty basic in retrospect. High quality nonetheless, soft touch on the dash, some nice accent stitching all around, and the switchgear is of a reasonable quality. The seats I'm sitting in are a combination of cloth and Softex. These are sort of a sports seat. They have a nice pattern on them that gives them a little bit of a look. These seats are relatively comfortable as I sit here. There's good side bolstering. They do have power adjustment for the driver. It is manual for the passenger. And the steering wheel in this case is a leather steering wheel. It has paddle shifters on it, switchgear for infotainment, as well as the instrument cluster. The instrument cluster here is actually a pretty high feature, fully digital cluster, and it does have hard analog needles off to the sides. It does allow some level of customization. Center stack, very simply laid out. Infotainment screen at the top, hard controls for the HVAC in the center. In this case, we have climate control, and then the lower center console. Now, a very simple design on this center console, you can see that, but it doesn't have a lot of utility in my opinion. There's a cubby up front that you can put your phone, but you really can't see what's going on with your phone. It's sort of hidden away, and that really is the only convenient place to put your phone other than perhaps use the cup holders. There are switches up here at the front for the heated seats that this has. Drive mode selector, gear selector, a nice lever, I like that. Although even in this high-end model, it doesn't have a leather wrap on it. Cup holders down low in the center, and storage here Not that much. There are some ports down there for USB as well as 12 volt, but not quite large enough for a square tissue box. That's sort of a reference on the size. Sitting in the back of the Corolla, you're not going to be mistaking this for a mid-size sedan or one of the competitors like the Honda Civic or the Hyundai Elantra when it comes to space back here. This is still the compact class when it comes to comfort and overall livability back here. Now, these seats are set for my height, about 5'9" with my boots on. My legroom's okay. You can see I've got a couple of inches here, but the seating position being in a compact sedan is very low. My knees are perched up. I feel like I'm sitting down in a hole. If there's a consolation for that, these seats do have a good level of contouring, so I feel supported in the fact that I'm scrunched down in these. If you were sitting in the middle seat, this is a raised area, so you'd have less headroom there. Now, my headroom is okay. I've got about 2 inches above my head here. When it comes to amenities, not really a whole lot going on back here. I do, of course, have a power window. You'd expect that, but looking at the back of the console, there are no power ports of any kind. There are no vents. Other vehicles in this class are offering that. The trunk space, however, is pretty generous. These seats do fold down in a 60-40 split to allow longer things to be in there, but plenty of space in that trunk. Underneath that floor, you will find a full kit with your jack and all of the tools, as well as a temporary spare tire. Overall, as I sort of look at scoring this interior, I really have to look at a lot of the new competition from Hyundai, from Kia, from Honda. The new Civic, probably one of the best interiors in class. While this was one of the better interiors when it first came out, it's not quite up to speed with a lot of what you can get for the same money from the competition. Material quality is okay. Feature content is really where I find at this price we're missing a lot of little things, vents in the back. Overall, it just feels kind of basic for the money. This interior gets 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is what Toyota calls the high end for the Corolla. No longer offering a JBL branded system. This is what they call Audio Plus. In here, it's an 8-inch screen. It does have a good amount of hard controls on either side, volume and tuning. I always like that. There's even a button here for the map, even though it doesn't actually have nav. That is a subscription add-on service. And that really is where a lot of Toyotas fall short, in my opinion, is a lot of the feature content that's available here is ultimately a pay service. You have to pay to get that. You pay to get it in your car, then you have to pay to use it, which is kind of a bummer in my opinion. It does have a backup camera that works reasonably well. It has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, but that is a plug-in service at this point in time, not wireless like some of the competition's offering in their Highline models. And when I look at the visibility here, it has sort of a matte finish screen, which actually tends to make the glare worse. As you can see, looking at it from different angles, you always have to be looking through glare, whether you have the sunroof open or not, to see the graphics. The other thing I'm not really happy with here is the fact that this always goes to this home screen every time you start the car. So if you like to navigate to your audio, and I like to look at my stations, I like to see what's going on with my audio and be able to go to my presets. Every time I get in the car, I have to navigate to that. It doesn't stay where I left it when I turn the car off. When it comes to rating this system, the audio quality is okay. Even when it was a JBL branded system, they weren't exactly the best in the world, but here I would call this class average. The controls, the menu layouts, some of the things we talked about could be improved, as well as the feature content that other automakers offer that don't make you pay for it on a subscription level. Here you do. This infotainment system gets 4 out of 5 stars. What's under the hood here is the more powerful of the two engines available in the Toyota Corolla this year. That is a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. And here it's rated at 169 horsepower, 151 pound-feet of torque. It's rated by the EPA at 31 miles of the gallon city, 38 highway, and 34 mpg combined. All right, my friends, finally time to take a test drive. Now we're out here in a desert back road area. There's nobody out here. It's where I like to really bring a sporty car to test it out and feel like I'm not getting into everybody's hair. Now, what we just talked about what's under the hood, this having a continuously variable transmission, not my favorite choice when it comes to a performance car, but this one does have an extra little bit thrown to the enthusiast. It has a conventional first gear, so when you take off from a stop and when you get out of that first gear, you do have a genuine shift going on, so it gives you a little bit more of a direct feel. a little bit more feeling of a traditional type of vehicle. And so I'm coming to a stop here. And I'll also point out, this doesn't have auto start stop. That is a wonderful thing. So I take off and I get that conventional shift, which makes this feel a little bit more normal. After that, this does give you simulated shifts with the bands in the continuously variable transmission, and you can also tap into those with the paddle shifters. So having said all that, if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So let's come to a complete stop here. We are in sport mode. All right, and go. A little bit slow off the start. My first shift out of that first gear, and 60. And I'm continuing to get these simulated shifts, which aren't bad, but only in sport mode do you get that level of engagement. If you really start mashing the pedal and driving this hard, however, you really notice the fact that you've got a continuously variable transmission under your foot. Really, they should have offered us the manual transmission all the way up here into the XSE, given the rest of the performance options that this car has. So that said, this is rated at 34 mpg combined. I got 32 in my week with it. Not bad considering the air conditioning's on. It's spring here in Arizona already in February. But you know, when it comes to this powertrain, I'm looking at what you can get from the competition for the same money. The Honda Civic Si, 200 horsepower. You get into the N-Line from the Hyundai Elantra, a lot more than that. And so it's just not quite up to speed with the competitors in terms of what they're offering in their compact performance. And the CVT, good as it is, it's just a buzzkill. So this powertrain gets 3 out of 5 stars. So the Toyota Corolla is built on the very popular and pretty highly acclaimed TNGA architecture, Toyota New Global Architecture. I've driven quite a few cars with this architecture, this chassis, and I've praised them pretty well. Now this one is quite a bit different, and that's because this has a performance suspension on it, which I'm actually surprised how aggressive this suspension is for the scope of this car. This is lowered 0.6 of an inch, and it's significantly stiffer both in springs and in damper rates. And of course, we've got these low profile tires on 18-inch wheels. So what that does is it does give us a pretty good level of handling and precision that is well above what you're going to find in the standard Corolla. Out here on this back road, which is pretty noisy pavement, I'm finding that it's pretty noisy out here. The road noise and the wind noise is pretty high. On the 70-mile-an-hour stretch, it was 65.7 decibels, which is on the higher end of the scale of vehicles that I test. The steering has a pretty heavy feel, but because we do have this stiff suspension and stiffer anti-roll bars, when you throw it into a corner, it gives you the kind of response that you want if you're looking for a car that handles well. Now, the downside, this has a few of those, and that is the fact that this is a very, very stiff suspension. The ride quality is not very good. Now, right here, we're filming on a pretty smooth piece of road, but around town with potholes and road cracks, things like that, whew, you better really like how this thing feels cornering, because you're paying for it everywhere else. The ride quality, it just rides very stiff. It's got a buckboard ride. It literally beats you to death on average everyday roads. And that would be worth it to me if this thing had 300 horsepower, and that's why it had that stiff suspension, and that's why this thing was dialed up to where it's at, but it doesn't. With the level of horsepower this has, it just does not justify a beat you to death track suspension. And the last part of the equation is the fact that, the fact that, you know, with all the bumps and the ruts and the rough ride that this has, it really causes the structure of this car to feel less than. And that is to say that because of the stiffer suspension, you feel more body flex, you get more rattles in the interior trim. It accentuates the fact that this doesn't have the strongest structure, whereas a softer suspension tends to mask that. So all in, the chassis gets 3 out of 5 stars. If anything, because the suspension and the chassis is just dialed way too far up for the context of this car. Now it's time to talk about value, which should be a pretty easy conversation since this is the Toyota Corolla and all, right? I mean, if you type in value on Wikipedia, the picture of this car comes up. It's like Consumer Reports quintessential baby Jesus forever and a day. Now I'm being a little bit facetious, but Corolla has always been known as that car where if you ask somebody, hey, what's a good car I should be buying that's a good value, blah, 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 never gonna break, people most often are gonna say Toyota Corolla. But this is a car that is aimed at the driving enthusiast. Toyota has gone pretty hard at that with this performance suspension. They've gone pretty hard at that with the visuals, the ground effects, and all of those things. But the powertrain, the interior, and some of the parts of this car that haven't been changed really are starting to show their age. This car is getting a little bit long in tooth, especially in light of competitors like the Honda Civic Si and the Hyundai Elantra with their N packages, which can be had with a lot more performance, a lot more pizzazz, better handling I might also add, at about the same price. So that's really how I look at value and how I look at competitiveness. So I put value here at 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 3.5 stars for the review. So there you go. That is my assessment of the 2022 Toyota Corolla APEX. Now I invite you to follow us on social media. You can keep up on everything we do, plus what we don't get to do a video on right down below. You'll see the links for that, Test Driven TV across the board. I also invite you to see our latest video if you like what we do right there, and better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.